I'd like to share with you my vision of what I think sustainable community development could look like in the year 2015. Every community would have in place a dynamic, integrated community sustainability plan with a timeline of at least 100 years. 100 years is a really important time frame. Many think, how can you plan that far ahead? But imagine if, when we were doing our electrical grid, if we had planned for 100 years, perhaps we would have buried them underground and not had them above ground and so susceptible to ice storms. Sustainable development can be regarded as a process involving the reconciliation of three imperatives: the ecological imperative, to live within global biophysical carrying capacity and to maintain biodiversity; the social imperative, to ensure the development of democratic systems of governance that can effectively sustain the values by which people wish to live; and the economic imperative, to ensure that basic needs are met worldwide. Dialogue. The new stories for development won't happen without dialogue, and difference and conflict is part of that dialogue. But communities will be actively engaged through their integrated planning processes in dialogue about their meaning, what is important to them and their children. And now that dialogue has to be deliberative, because we humans are not very good at embracing difference. Communities in the future recognize that diversity just doesn't happen. In a dynamically interconnected multicultural nation, inclusion has to be deliberately planned and designed into community conversations and planning. Reconnection with place. Communities deliberate about what characteristics of place are important to them and how to sustain these characteristics. They don't just assume that you can continue to have your cake and eat it too. Space. Similarly, in the future, communities know that they must create and maintain space for other creatures, recognizing their interconnectivity, in particular how their well-being is mutually linked. How many of you have ever looked at nature and said to yourself, boy, nature sure screwed up in that one? Nature doesn't. It has a wonderful design. There is virtually no waste in natural systems. Sustainable communities everywhere will design with nature and not over nature. Regeneration of the land, air, and water through celebrating and embracing diversity in all its forms, culturally, linguistically, and critically for the sake of humanity and other species. Back in the year 2007, 80% of architects were male, with a profound influence on the built environment. In the future, in the year 2015, design teams reflect the diversity within the community. They are also concerned about distributive justice. Gone are the inequitable distributions of the first decade of the 21st century, where half the world was suffering from obesity and the other half from malnutrition. Compassion is really important because you can choose to come from your pain or from your heart. And coming from your heart is always the strongest place to come from. Resilience is based on scale, where communities through their planning processes determine the optimal scale for systems essential for their resilience, not maximal scale. Not all systems should be at a global scale, especially food, because of the embedded transportation costs and climate change adaptation and mitigation. Redundancies. Communities are deliberately planning and deciding on what are the critical ecosystem structures and functions that need to be sustained and ensure their resilience by maintaining a diversity of those ecosystems. In maintenance, just as in ecosystems, the communities of the future have as much invested into new infrastructure as maintaining and enhancing the existing infrastructure. Reconciliation. These deliberative conversations and integrated planning processes result in a high civic literacy around the dynamic interrelationship between place, space, scale, diversity, and limit. They are mutually interdependent, and their sustainability is dependent upon a community's capacity to engage in sustained deliberate dialogue around their common desired futures. In my vision of Canada's sustainable community development in the year 2015, common sense is the norm, where we design with nature and not over or against, that we see ourselves as part of nature, not apart from nature. that we live in a world where the belief of a former Prime Minister, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, in 1975. What I dare to believe is that men and women everywhere will come to understand that no individual, no government, no nation is capable of living in isolation or of pursuing policies inconsistent with the interests, both present and future, of others. That self-respect is not self-perpetuating, but depends for its existence on access to social justice. To ensure through our efforts that hope and faith in the future are not reserved for a minority of the world's population, but are available to all, has now been realized.